Good morning, everyone. I'm Rabiatul Adawiah from Universiti Teknologi Sabah branch. I'm pleased to present a review paper that looks at the intersection between green technology and carbon emissions in selected emerging Asian economies. As our region strives for economic growth, the challenge is how do we grow sustainably and responsibly. This research explores how green innovation might help answer that. So let's begin with by setting the next context. As you can see here, climate change is no longer a distant issue. It's a present crisis. Countries worldwide are now shifting from fossil fuels to renewable energy, and this is where green technology becomes crucial. It's not just about reducing emissions, it's also about improving energy efficiency, enabling clean industrial growth, and creating sustainable livelihoods. So let's move on to the next slide. Despite the momentum, there's a critical gap in our understanding. Most existing research focus on developed nations like OECD countries, European countries, but when we look at fast growing economies in Asia, especially in the context of sectoral impacts, we find the literature is fragmented or limited. So this study is aims to explore how effective green innovation in reducing emissions, and does its effectiveness vary across sectors like agriculture, industry, and services. Here are the core objectives. First, to examine how green technology innovation impacts carbon emissions. Second, to focus on selected emerging Asian countries where industrial growth is booming. And third, to break this down sectorally in the primary sector like agriculture, the secondary sector, manufacturing, and the tertiary sector, services and transport. So this sectoral breakdown is help us see where green technology is working and where it's struggling. Now, this research is grounded in the induced innovation theory by Hicks in 1932. So the theory suggests that innovation doesn't happen randomly. It's a response to pressures like rising costs or regulations. In our case, as environmental regulations tighten and resource becomes scarce, firms are induced to innovate, often turning to cleaner, more efficient technologies. So this framework helps explain why green innovation emerge in some contexts more than others. So looking at this figure, you will see that emissions in China, India, and the rest of selected emerging Asian countries have been steadily rising from 20 until to 2020. So this reflects the rapid industrial expansion. Clearly, we cannot rely on traditional methods alone. The challenge is not just to grow, but to grow clean. That's why green innovation, when deployed effectively, is a game changer. So let's move into sectoral analysis. In the primary sector, mainly agriculture and forestry, we find promising innovations like low emission rice, solar powered irrigation, and agroforestry. These practices can significantly reduce methane and carbon emissions. However, adoption is limited. Many smallholders lack financing, training, or policy support. So while the technology exists, it isn't reaching those who need it most. Next, the secondary sector. We focus on industry and manufacturing. Here, some large firms, particularly in China, have adopted cleaner production processes and energy efficient systems, driven by regulations and incentives. But for small and medium enterprise, outdated infrastructure and financing constraints remain huge barriers. This inequality in access limits the sector's overall green potential. Now, to the tertiary sector, services, transport, and logistics. So green innovation here includes things like smart mobility solutions, in energy efficient building designs, and also green logistic platforms. The problem? Many emissions in this sector are indirect. Scope 3, Scope 3 emissions which are harder to track and regulate, plus weak policy enforcement limits the effectiveness of this green solution. So, what do we learn from all of this? Green technology is promising, but it's not a silver bullet. Its impact is highly dependent on context. So, without institutional support, clear regulations, and strategic sectoral planning, innovation cannot reach its full potential, and barriers, technical, financials, and regulatory, still hold many regions and sectors back. So here are the key recommendations. First, strengthen regulatory frameworks and enforce them effectively. Second, expand access to green financing, especially for small medium enterprise and rural farmers. Third, invest in clean energy R&D, research and development, and infrastructure. And finally, encourage regional cooperation to share technology, data, and success stories. These actions will help translate innovation into real, scalable change. So, to conclude that green technology is essential for achieving Asia's emission goals, but effectiveness isn't universal. It depends on where, how, and under what condition it's used. That's why we need tailored, sector-specific strategies backed by good governance and strong policy support. Thank you very much for your attention. I welcome any questions, thoughts, or reflections you may have.